Hey, just a quick note that the following video was recorded actually last week, and we finished editing it about 4 hours before the Wagner rebellion. So the video is actually just a coincidence. It doesn't mean that this is happening. It's all just a coincidence. As far as the Wagner thing goes, there's some rumor going around that it was a deep state operation, or Wagner quit as soon as he got the nuclear weapons out of the command post. None of that is true. It was a rebellion. Wagner has always been upset about how Russia was prosecuting the war and the supplies that they were getting and how they were basically being neglected and stuff like that. So that's all it was about. There's nothing else about it. All these other rumors you're hearing, just nonsense. But like I said, this video is just an absolute coincidence. Don't read anything into it, but we still think it's important enough to release. So here we are, this week's DEFCON Digest. And welcome to the DEFCON Warning System Digest. I'm Tom Lonelywolf, the director of the DEFCON Warning System. So here I am with my new shorter haircut, the way the girl likes it, and what the girl likes, the girl gets. That's happy wife, happy life, things like that. I actually hate my hair short. It's wavy and it curls up and stuff like that. So that's why I like it long. It tends to straighten out. A bit more, and also short hair makes me look older. No. Anyway, there you are. So what's brought this digest to our attention, and actually, like I said, the last one, we changed what we were going to do to something that came up recently, and this one is actually not what we were originally going to do in the first place. This is kind of a bit of a follow-up on the last one. There's been a lot of talk in Russia about nuclear weapon use. A lot of the major media is talking about it, and they're wondering, why don't they just, nuke Ukraine and force them to capitulate, or, nuke NATO bases to stop them from supplying Ukraine.
По поводу угрозы ядерной войны, Светлана Геннадьевна, вы правы, такая угроза нарастает, здесь что греха таить. По поводу того, что Россия ни при каких обстоятельствах не применит первый, но если не применит первый, ни при каких обстоятельствах, значит и второй тоже не применит, потому что возможности применения в случае нанесения ядерного удара по нашей территории, они сильно ограничены. Тем не менее, у нас стратегия наша применения средств защиты, а именно как защиту мы рассматриваем оружие массового поражения, ядерное оружие, она вся настроена вокруг так называемого ответно-встречного удара.
When will Russia resort to nuclear weapons? Because Joe Biden, president of the U.S., said that the threat of Russia using nuclear weapons is, quote, very real. So now the narrative is kind of switched to what will propel them to use nuclear weapons, and what this digest here is going to look at is where will they use a nuclear weapon. So generally, there's a couple of schools of thought on that. Let's remove the idea that they're going to use nuclear weapons on NATO targets. That's not happening. Certainly not for a first strike. The first nuclear weapons use is going to be demonstrative, I believe. It's not going to be used to halt advancing. Well, yeah, it could be used to halt advancing Ukrainian troops, but ultimately it's going to be demonstrative. What we're looking at now is a first-use nuclear weapon detonation by Russia to demonstrate the resolve, maybe get Ukraine to capitulate. So where would that take place? It could take place in an unoccupied area of Ukraine. It could in over the ocean. There's some believe that Russia may conduct an atmospheric above ground test first before they actually start dropping bombs on Ukraine. That certainly is something to consider. That's actually probably be my first go-to. If I was the Russian president, I would do a ground test or an atmospheric test first over my own territory, maybe way over, in Siberia or something like that, where they do their, or someplace where they do their they did their tests back in the 60s and stuff when they were doing these above ground tests. Maybe even over the ocean someplace if they really wanted to tick off the world. But I'm seeing it would be somewhere over in Russian territory. But let's say it's gone beyond that. They've done an atmospheric test, a ground test, and they're ready to move on to detonating something over Ukraine. Or let's say they just skipped the ground test and they really would just want to hammer it to Ukraine and send one over there. So what would that look like? So the first thing is, where would it be? For our scenario, we're going to say that they're going to target Kyiv. They've always talked about cutting off command and control. Kyiv is a nice little target. There's some theory in war that you don't kill the leadership because you need somebody to negotiate a surrender with. So there's various other places that they could detonate a bomb, but we're gonna pick Kyiv just because that would be a nice decapitation strike, and it certainly would scare the bejeebies out of anyone else. So we're gonna pick Kyiv. The next one is, what type of bomb would they drop? They're not going to drop a megaton bomb on a city. There's no reason to do that. You don't drop megaton bombs on cities. It's a waste of resources. Bombs, their destructive power is exponential. No, that's not the right word. Logarithmic. I don't know. We have a nuclear engineering guy on our staff, and he'll give me the right word after this digest is already over. But what it essentially means is that if you double the destructive power of a nuclear bomb, you're not going to get double the destruction. So if you have a 1 megaton bomb and you destroy this much area, there's the camera. You destroy this much area. A 2 megaton bomb is not going to destroy twice the area. That's not the way it works. The way it works is that a 1 megaton bomb will be like this, and instead of a 2 megaton being like this, a 2 megaton bomb may be like that, and a 3 megaton bomb may be like that, and a 4 megaton bomb like that. So the bigger the bomb, it's more efficient to use 2 smaller bombs than 1 big bomb. So if 1 megaton bomb will give you this, 2 500 kiloton bombs will give you this in destructive power, which is much more than 2 megaton bomb. That's the way nuclear bombs do. That's why city killer bombs are not megaton. They're kiloton bombs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up something called Nuke Map. A lot of people who follow DEFCON are familiar with this. For those of you who are not, it is a nuclear detonation simulator. It will show you the destructive power of a nuclear detonation, air burst or ground burst. It will show you different rings as to different destructive levels, and it will also, for an option, it will show you where the predicted radioactive fallout will go. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull up the nuke map. We're going to drop a bomb on Kyiv and see what it will do. So we can see not only the area of devastation for Ukraine, but also what it will do to Russia. So that's another reason why I picked Kyiv. It's a far enough target away from Russia, so Russia really won't feel the effects. Now, what we've done is, in our belief, for city attacks, you do an air burst. You get a much larger area of effect, but it's not as it doesn't have as much destructive power. You want destructive power to dig targets out. So when you're going after buried targets like Iran's nuclear site, or let's talk about NORAD in the United States, which is very heavily protected, you're going to be throwing multi-megaton bombs, surface burst at them, basically a nuclear bunker buster, except on a more massive scale. Air bursts are not good at digging targets out. What they do is they send a massive heat wave and then a massive air overpressure to destroy soft targets, buildings, planes, people, things like that. So an air burst has a much bigger area of effect, but it's not as devastating. A surface burst has a much smaller area of effect, but is much more devastating. It will dig those targets out. So that's why your city killers are air bursts. Much bigger area of effect, but the trade-off is that it's not as devastating. So if you got something, but generally you don't have military targets dug in cities. So that's why they're always airburst. So this is the nuclear war simulator. You can get it on Steam. It's kind of like Nuke Map, except you can do some additional things. You can adjust, you can tweak your missiles and things like that. You can fire off a whole salvo of missiles as opposed to Nuke Map, which only lets you detonate one at a time. But this one is like almost $30. It's $29.99. I think it's overpriced for what it offers. You know, if it was $15, yeah, maybe, but at $30, no, I wouldn't bother with it. And you know, there's some question about its accuracy as well. So you know, this is why I don't use it. So we're going to be using Nuke Map. So this is Nuke Map. What we're going to do is we're going to just type in Kyiv. So that's where we're going to detonate it. Here you can see the map of the area. There's Russia. So we're pretty far away from it. And the warhead yield, like I said, you know, you don't drop megaton weapons on cities. So the presets they have here, Davy Crockett, which is 20 tons, which is kind of nothing. You know, Hiroshima bomb is 15 kilotons. What we're going to do is we're going to choose a relatively large one, because again, we're thinking this is going to be a demonstration strike. So it's not going to be, you know, one of their big ones. It's not something that they launch at Chicago or anything like that. It's going to be small, something to do the job. But we're going to pick a big one just because we want this to be as bad as possible for Russia, to see what's going to happen to Russia, because half the idea is Russia's not going to want to strike Ukraine with a bomb that's going to affect them. They don't want the radiation coming over to them. So we're going to pick something relatively big, but not so big as to guarantee Russia will feel effects. So chances are they're going to throw maybe a 100 kiloton nuclear bomb at Kyiv. But what we're going to do is we're going to use 300 kilotons. That's what we're going to pick. 300 kilotons just for giggles. Let's make this kind of big, make it as bad for Russia as we can. This is going to be an air burst. So what we're going to do, I'm going to click on the radioactive fallout. What this means is that this is not only going to show the blast damage, but it's going to show out what kind of radioactive fallout that we can expect and see where it goes. So we got a 300 kiloton nuclear weapon airburst over Kyiv. Airbursts are designed for soft targets, your cities, your personnel, your people. A nuclear weapon detonated over a military targets like advancing infantry and mechs, that will be an airburst. Your ground bursts are solely for dug in targets. So the old maps, the old nuclear weapons maps that the United States had of where all the yummy targets are, we have that actually on the DEFCON site if you want to read those. Those all presumed 20 megaton surface bursts. I think they all presumed 20 megaton surface bursts, and that's where the radiation charts came from. Those all presume surface bursts. That's not how nuclear war happens. That's not how World War III is going to happen. The majority of nuclear detonations will be airbursts. Your only surface bursts are going to be for dug-in targets, and those are very few. So the radioactive fallout charts that you see on our site that the United States government's put out are horribly inaccurate, but we put them there because we figure we want you to be as prepared as possible. So just go ahead and prepare as if you're going to get the worst radiation you're going to get. That way your shelter is going to be nice and survivable. So even when it'll be more than ready to deal with the radiation that actually comes, as opposed to the worst case scenario that the United States government predicted, which will never happen in 100 million years, unless you actually happen to live next to one of those ground targets, like NORAD or something like that. So okay, I'm going way off the base. I really kind of wanted to keep this digest short. So let's go ahead and nuke Kyiv. Blam. So this red area right here, that is you're just you're dead. I got to tell you, I'm actually colorblind. I have trouble seeing some of these colors, so that's why I'm kind of moving my cursor around so I can see the rings. So I'm not black and white colorblind. Very few people are like that. I have. It starts with a D, and I can't pronounce it. It's like 1% of the population has it, so I have trouble with colors. I got a fun Disneyland story. Maybe if I remember at the end of this, if you want to stick around and hear it, I'll tell you my fun Disneyland story about my color blindness. But anyway, so this is moderate blast damage. Here, this ring right here, you're just fried. You're just doomed. That's pretty much ground zero. This is what this says: the most residential buildings collapsed, injuries are universal, fatalities are widespread. This is your thermal radiation radius, third-degree burns. You definitely don't want to be here. This is a 4.45 miles radius from ground zero. This is light blast damage, 8.2 miles. So you can see, even with a 300 kiloton nuclear weapon detonated over the city, if you're 8 miles out, if you're more than 8.2 miles out, you're safe. You're okay. You're going to survive. Even this area, even if you're outside the 4.45 mile radius, if you're in the light blast damage, you've got a pretty good chance of surviving, as long as you're not standing in front of glass windows. So nuclear war is survivable. It really is. You just have to prepare for it. So now that's the fireball radius. See, that's what I was talking about, the fireball radius. That's your ground zero. You're just doomed. Forget it. You're dead. So for fallout, here's what's interesting. The air burst is too high to produce fallout. You're going to get some fallout. There's nothing. A nuclear weapon has to detonate pretty darn high, and we're talking probably EMP effect high for it to not produce any fallout. But air bursts over cities are not going to produce that much fallout. Now you're going to get fires and stuff like that, and that's going to produce a lot of soot. But that stuff is not going to be radioactive per se. The things are made radioactive from the ionizing blast. If it's not ionized at the time of the blast, it's not going to get radioactive after that. So, and the ionizing part of the nuclear weapon is the fireball area. So again, we got a nuclear engineer on our staff who can talk more about this stuff. So please come over to our forums and ask us questions about that. But so when the ionized buildings and stuff like that, those start to burn and throws off the radioactive soot and debris, yeah, that's going to be radioactive. But if something's not made radioactive at the time of the blast, it's not going to be made radioactive. So if you have tinned food and the tin isn't open, the food inside is not going to be radioactive. The food is perfectly safe to eat. A banana is perfectly safe to eat. Just peel away the skin, and that banana is perfectly safe to eat. An orange is perfectly safe to eat. Just peel away the skin. Apples, just cut the skin away or just wash it off. The fallout doesn't make something else radioactive. Just wash the fallout out and eat the apple. It's fine. So, like I said, Russia would not be affected by an airburst over Kyiv. They may get like little, when I say not affected, I mean they're going to get little radioactive particles and things like that. They're going to get something because of the fires and stuff like that. But it's going to be acceptable. It's an acceptable risk for Russia. It's going to be an acceptable risk for Russia. See, look how far. Now remember, okay, I'll actually talk about this part when we get to the surface burst, because now we're going to do a surface burst. This is never going to happen, but let's pretend for a moment that they're going to surface burst again. We're going to make this as horrible as possible for Russia. So let's see, advanced options. This has got to be, where's the surface burst on this? There it is, airburst. Sort of, it's off in the corner. It's kind of hard to see. Oops, I got mail. Yeah, I know that's the old Windows 95 theme. I kind of liked it, so I used it as my new mail thing. So probably spam. So who cares? So we're going to show ionizing particles for 100 rems of radiation. That's one sievert, I think it is. So I can't remember my conversion chart. So let's detonate this. Now, did you see how much smaller that circle got? The fire radius, we were talking about moderate blast damage was 4 point something miles. Now it's only 1.9 miles. Thermal radiation, like I can't remember what it was, like 8 miles or something like that. Now it's 3.93. See how much, or light blast damage is 4.89 miles. That was at light blast damage. It was like 8 something or 9 something. I can't remember. But see, now it's halved. So surface bursts, see, they have a much smaller area of effect. But what we're looking at is the radioactive footprint, and look how far it stretches. But even then, it doesn't hit Russia. And this fallout ring, where is it? So I used to see here. See, here's 500 rems of radiation. That's 500 rems an hour. You don't want to be in that. That's you're just doomed. Radiation radius, 100 rems. Let's see, where's that? There's supposed to be another. Oh well. Now see, this is the heavy fallout, lighter fallout, and this goes down to 1 rem, I think it is, an hour. I can't find it here. I saw it here last night when I was researching this, but no, I can't find it. But see, this is very, very light. I think this comes to like one rem an hour or something like that, and beyond that it's less than 1 rem an hour, 1 rad an hour. Rem and rad, there's a scientific difference between the two, but for public use, rem, rad, rotogens, it's all the same thing. The difference is absorption rate and stuff like that, but nobody cares. 1 rem, 1 rad, 1 rotogen, same thing as far as public is concerned. It's just the same thing, but the scientists argue over the difference about what they are. But see, it doesn't even reach Russia, and what does hit Russia is going to be very, very low. Remember the rule of 7s. For every 7, the radioactivity drops down 90%. So after the first hour, however much radiation you have, it will drop 90%. So if you're starting at 100 rads, after 1 hour, you're down to 10 rads. 7 hours later, you're down to 10 rads. 49 hours later, 7 times 7, you're down to 1 rad. Another 7 times, what's 7 times 40, what's 7 times 48? I don't know. But that many hours. That's why the government always says about 2 weeks. About 2 weeks, you're dropping, you're about 1/100th of the original strength. Now, when we're talking about 1,000 rads or something, that's not something you still want to go be walking around in. But it's okay for limited exposure. But that's why the government says stay in your shelter for 2 weeks, because by 2 weeks, most of the hard stuff is because radiation it blows out so much energy. That's why you're getting 1,000 rads or 10,000 rads. It expends so much energy so quickly. That's why it drops so quickly after the first 7 hours, the first 49 hours, and then after that, and so on and so on and so on. But that's why once you get past those 2 weeks, it takes a whole lot of time for it to drop another 90%. That's why after the first 2 weeks, now you're looking at months, and then you're talking years and things like that. So it takes a whole lot of time for radiation to go away completely. And I use completely in kind of like a relative term, but for the major radiation, it drops off pretty fast. But anyway, so this is why Russia can detonate a nuclear weapon in Ukraine and be generally safe from the effects. See, because like I said, they're not going to drop. This is the worst case scenario: a surface burst which tosses out a ton of radiation, which is not going to happen. It is going to be an airburst, and airbursts are not going to produce any substantial radiation at all. So we can even move this thing closer to Russia's border, and no, that's not how to do it. I have no idea how to change the. Oh, there we go. There, see, we can move this even closer to Russia's border and still have no radioactive threat to Russia. So This is why Russia can detonate a nuclear weapon in Ukraine and be safe from its effects. So why was this important? Why did we bother, bringing this up? Because a lot of people don't believe that Russia will drop a nuclear bomb. Now, there are other considerations to make in this. What would be NATO's reaction? What would be the West's reaction? What will be the world's reaction? What will be these neutral countries' reaction? What will be China's reaction? China has told Russia, don't be doing stupid stuff like that. But so that's all stuff that Russia has to consider as well. But when it comes to, will Russia be afraid to drop a nuclear bomb on Ukraine because they're afraid of the effects? Nope. Russia's not going to feel any effects, or they're going to feel the effects, but it's not going to be enough for them to worry about. They don't really care about those border cities anyway, stuff like a bunch of peasants there. But certainly Moscow's not going to feel it. So yes, Russia could, in theory, drop a nuclear bomb on Ukraine and not worry about the effects, at least from the nuclear weapons. So for those of you thinking that Russia will never drop a nuclear bomb because they're afraid of what will happen to them, you're wrong. Russia is not afraid to drop a nuclear bomb on Ukraine because they're not going to feel the effects from the nuclear bomb. Like I said, socioeconomic effects, political effects, yeah, that's part of the calculus. How is NATO going to react? Will they send in troops after that? Will they be sending long-range missiles? I don't think NATO would back off if Russia. They're not going to be scared off if Russia pops off a nuclear bomb. I think it's going to harden their resolve even more. They will very seriously tell Ukraine to back off from Crimea, because Crimea, as we have constantly said, is their real red line. All these other red lines that Russia has put off, those are all just stupid jokes that they had no intention of following through because they're afraid of the consequences. But Crimea, gosh darn it, that warm water port is what they want, and they are going to defend that to the atom. They will nuke somebody over that, guaranteed. So, okay, that's the end of this digest. Thank you very much. I forgot to mention this at the beginning. Please like us and subscribe to us. That's how we get recommended. That's how YouTube and other, other video things, decide whether to recommend our video to other people. And as a warning system, how do we warn people if they don't know about us? So that's how we get our word out. So please like us and subscribe to us. Now my Disney story. So if you want to hit the button now and stop, and you don't want to hear this, go ahead. But my Disney story, my colorblind Disney story. I was working at the plaza, the center of Disneyland, the hub, the area that branches off into the other lands. And what they did for a while is kids can come up and get a little bracelet that says how tall they were, so if they could go on certain rides, because certain rides had certain height requirements, and different rides had different height requirements. So they'd get a different color wristband depending on how high they were. So that way they didn't have to get measured when they went to the ride. They show the wristband, and what they would do is they would stand under this little sensor, and it would flash a little light that would say what color wristband they would get, and it was red, yellow, and green, just like a stoplight was. But the problem was the colors that they used were not as vivid as stoplights, and I have trouble even with some stoplights. So yellow was kind of not really deep, bright yellow. It was kind of a faded yellow, and green was not a deep green. It was kind of a faded green, and red was not a deep red. It was a faded red. So I would have trouble seeing the difference between red, yellow, and green, because it was not red, yellow, green. It was just one light, and it flashed, and it just shone a different color depending on what height they were. So I'd look at this, and I was just giving the wrong bands to all these kids because I couldn't see what the color was. So that was kind of messed up. So I just called supervision over there and tell them, I've got this problem. So, and they kept assigning me there because they didn't get me off of it. And I'd get signed and I'd get out there and I'd call up supervisors. Hey, they got me out there. And the supervisors go, oh my gosh, you shouldn't be there. And they'd transfer me over to some other place. But that's my Disney colorblind story. So if you found that entertaining, great. Give me a like and subscribe to us. And if you didn't find it entertaining, give me a like and subscribe to me anyway, because I get very, very hurt when people don't like me. So thank you very much. I am Tom Lonely Wolf, the director of the DEFCON Warning System. Please visit us on our website, defconwarningsystem.com, and again, visit us on our community forum where we interact with people.